properly, my name is Levi. I am the CEO at Deedmop, and I will be hosting this session today together with my colleague Gerbrand. He's my trusted right hand in all things what we do to support partners of Deedmop, and we prepared this presentation for you today. I am 37 years old actually right now. Last week was my birthday, so the years are counting. And I have 2 kids, third on the way. It's due the 1st of November. So there is a slight possibility that I have to step away from my desk. And that is, I think, a very proper reason for me to step away. Otherwise, my girlfriend would also kill me if I would stay seated and do the presentation. Anyways, let me start sharing my screen and we'll dive straight into it. So we're gonna go through the entire presentation in a breeze. We're taking this step by step, but we're also taking questions in between. So you can also open the chat. It would also be cool if you could introduce yourself to the rest of the group. And that's also the place where you can just fire away all of your questions that you have and just let us know so we can step away from the presentation and dive into what you want to discuss. That's the benefit of attending live. As I said, impact reporting. We're going to start with a little bit about the why behind impact measurement and why it matters, how an impact framework could help you communicate the true value of what you do. And as always, we have some best practices and examples and tips to share for you to get inspired, because we don't have to invent the wheel ourselves. There have been great examples throughout the years that we've done this. A little bit about Deep. We provide volunteer.
Levi, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Gerbrand muted me. Nice. But a bit about Deedmop. We provide volunteer management platforms to infrastructure organizations, CVSs, volunteer centers, local governments, but also to nonprofits directly. The example that we shared is Grandma Soup. It's an amazing charity here in the Netherlands. But we also work with corporate partners such as Red Bull and TomTom. So the insights we're sharing today are also derived from those partnerships that we have across the board. And while I was preparing for this session, this quote came to mind. It is a quote that I have on my desktop on a loop, because I need to be constantly reminded that success is not about how high we have climbed, how many matches we've done, how many people we've supported, but it's about the positive difference that we're making in the world. And that is, I think, what we're all about. And today is about trying to see if we can measure that positive difference that we are making in our daily jobs. Before we get to the how behind impact reporting, we start with the why, or in some occasions, the why shouldn't we do something with impact reporting? If we look at the objective behind impact reporting, we see it as that we want to calculate the value of the volunteer efforts or all of the core services that we offer, and to recognize the amount of community support that we provide to third sector organizations. If you look at the definition, you would say, well, that's what we do. This is what we do. We just report on that. But in reality, it is much more difficult. And that's also what we recognize. There are also other benefits to reporting about your impact, because ultimately we want to showcase the difference that we made and we want to validate that. But other benefits to impact reporting are not just communicating the value of volunteering or your core services. It's also used to retain volunteers more because we validate the work that they do and we are able to celebrate it. Sometimes we have accountability towards partners. Let's say you're working with a corporate on an impact day. They absolutely want to know what has been done and how they can qualify or quantify the difference. It's also where you get the learnings from that you can use to adapt your strategy and change your approach to how you deliver your services. And if you report to the community that you serve, it's also the way that you build credibility. And lastly, it is oftentimes used to make a business case that is used for grants or other types of funding. So enough reasons to get started with impact reporting, but this is also where some of the challenges are, because it's not as easy as it sounds. These are some of the examples that we've been hearing when it comes to impact reporting. We lack the skills. We don't have the people or the time to do proper impact reporting, or we don't have the full picture. We only have a certain view, a certain data set that we can report on, and it's no way complete. Or true impact, the work that we do is not easy to quantify. In some cases, we even heard, hey, we have better things to do than just build reports all day. We want to focus on our core job. Some also say, well, we focus more on the story. The numbers mean less to us. So these are some of the real things that we hear in the sector, and it's also completely understandable. So if we also look at the current status quo of impact reporting, we came to this, is that if you look at impact measurement, we truly believe that it needs to be simple, it needs to be efficient, and it needs to be practical. Because a lot of precious resources are wasted on extensive impact reports that nobody actually reads. Many impact reports also are a bit one-sided. They either look at activities or only at the rate of volunteer involvement. And they don't really get to the core of things. What is the difference that we've made? So we should prioritize measuring the actual results instead of just looking at the outputs. And for that, we need to be able to balance qualitative and quantitative data for us to have that complete view. This is what we've done. This is the story behind it. This is the effect, and this is the end result. In our sense, that would make up a decent impact report. Well, it's also easy for us to just list this and say, this is what it should look like. But what do we know? Because we understand that the reality of things is that it's oftentimes where the discussion about quality versus quantity arises. It's about, hey, we have amazing stories that we share and we lack data. Is that a bad thing? If we look at the qualitative side, it's absolutely amazing to read all the stories that we all share via social media, on our website, during events, because that is how we create connections. But you must understand that connections alone are oftentimes not enough to also convince people. That's where the numbers come in. Being able to share facts about a measurable effect that you created. That is also what funders oftentimes want to see. They want to see demonstrable value. So what is the value that you provided to the local community and the people living within those communities? When you get started with that, don't drown in the data that you have available, like these extensive data sets, or trying to measure everything. You need to start with the value that you provide and then work your way backwards from that. So if you want to understand the value that you deliver, you also need to understand if that aligns with the vision from the receiver of the impact report. Do they have the same need for the value that you communicate? So you need to determine who's in the audience, who will be the receiver of our impact report. What do they care about? What is the measurable effect that they want to see? And how did you make a difference? If you're able to communicate that, that is a proper way to communicate the quality that you provide. And that starts with asking the right questions. And I will also share some of those questions a little bit later on. If you look at the quantitative side of things, in terms of quantity, it oftentimes becomes a bit technical, like measuring data, collecting data, KPIs, and those sorts of things. In our opinion, most of the times you have a lot more data available than you think. So assess the data that you're already collecting. What do you already know? And how can you use that to your benefit as input for your impact reporting? If you look at volunteer placement or any other of your core services, in this case, volunteering, oftentimes also our partners know the amount of applications to opportunities, how many people registered, how many opportunities there are, matches, volunteer hours, all different bits of data that you have flowing through your organization. If you look at engagement, you oftentimes know the amount of training sessions that you provide, the amount of networking events, attendees, stuff like that. And if you look at the reach part, you oftentimes know how many people visit your website, how many people are subscribed to your newsletters, people following you on social media. So you have a pretty decent picture already of the landscape, the data landscape that you're in. Now comes the tricky part, is to decide which metrics, which data will help you quantify the difference that you make. And you need to find a way to combine the two of those, the quality stories and backing that up with proper data. We've seen volunteer stories where it dives deep into the experience of a volunteer, how it made a difference in their lives and how they approached it. And then back it up with data saying there are thousands more of these kind of people, and there are hundreds of organizations that are lookalikes within the sector that need the same or provide the same experiences. And that is a way to combine the quality side of things with the quantity. We have always valued at DeepMob the measurement side of things, because when we started with DeepMob and helping infrastructure organizations with volunteer management, we always said, well, if you cannot measure it, then you cannot improve it. And there are probably a bunch of famous quotes that would sound the same. But there's also this quote from Einstein, but I also found out that it's probably not Einstein, but I didn't do my fact checking well enough. But not everything that matters can be measured. Not everything that can be measured matters. I butchered that quote I see in my notes, but I think the point is clear. Like, you need to know what you measure for which purpose. If we look at DeepMob partners, they measure things on 3 different levels. The first one is what happens in our ecosystem, what happens on our platform. The second level is what happens on an organizational level. For example, what is the most interesting opportunity that they provide? What is the demand about? The other level is that of a volunteer. What are their preferences? What do they actually like? And the goal is to measure the value that you provide so that you're able to communicate it. We found an example during our search about an amazing impact report. I must say it was quite hard to find. Hannah is also in this session, and she shared with me the impact report from the London CVS network, which was also very, very helpful. But I found another one that I also quite liked. This is the impact report from Wokingham Volunteer Centre. It's a small market town, a little bit to the west of London. And I found their impact report, and I especially liked it because it was so well structured. And I want to highlight one example in which they showcase that they can combine quality and quantity. They have the community transport scheme. I think it's well known to many of you how that works. And they clearly defined what it's about, what the objective is. They also defined the outcomes that they want to see from this scheme. And within their impact report, they reported on the measurable effect of them. And this is what it looks like. So there's one simple page that explains what the scheme is about, what the outcomes are that they've seen, the effects, how they measure that with using KPIs, and what the view ultimately was for the Wokingham city. And I especially like this example because it clearly shows the value in quality backed up by numbers, especially if you look at what they wrote about the demand side of things, that they saw that there's an increasing demand, which they can clearly show, which will also help them secure more funding towards the future. So if you look at all of the theory that I shared, this is what the end result could and oftentimes should look like. I also remember when I said you need to ask the right questions. These are some of the examples that you can use to get to define the quality that you provide. It's about examples are what makes our service successful or unsuccessful. What is the success criteria? What does the success criteria looks like? How do we actually support people that we said we would? Are we connecting with the right people? Are people happy with our services? You can measure that with a survey. What about the demand? Is it increasing or decreasing? These sorts of insights are used to form your narrative within your impact reporting. Good reminder for me to also take a breather in between. Also, if there are questions so far. If not, then it's either completely clear or everybody's going like, hey, I'm already doing this. But I'm also happy to hear from you if you're already active with impact reporting. Please share the links if you want to, also to inspire others. We have more examples coming up, of course, and we'll also share this afterwards with all of you. But we discussed that the goal of impact measurement is to communicate value. We also understand that there's no one size fits all. It looks different for everybody depending on the context that you work with, the capacity that you have, the amount of data that you have available. But I think one thing is that you need to balance stories and numbers to be able to showcase the results that you have. For that, you can use an impact framework. And I borrowed the impact framework from my history working in marketing in the corporate sector, because it's not that different from the corporate sector where you need to be able to report on the impact or the results that you made. And I've always been working with objectives and key results. This is a well-known framework that you can use to structure your goals, measure KPIs, and list the initiatives that you do. The objective is where you want to go. It's a goal, something that you want to achieve. The key results show the progress that you're making while you're underway to reaching your goal. And the initiatives are the things that you do, the activities that you organize. If you look at this structure, this could also serve as the structure for a page within your impact report. This is what we set out to do. Usually these objectives are already part of your strategic plan, so you don't have to oftentimes think of them, but create them. Key results are about, hey, this is what we pay attention to. This is what success looks like. And the initiatives are, this is what we're doing, the action that we will undertake to reach our objective. And like I mentioned in the beginning, I see a lot of impact reports that focus on one of these elements. They either stay they're a bit abstract, as in this is what we set out to do, or they heavily focus on the initiatives with extensive stories about quality stories about the initiatives, but we're not able to connect them to a measurable change or a measurable effect, let alone connect them to, oh, this is what you set out to do, because you received the funding based on all three of these, being able to show what you're about, what success looks like, and what you'll be doing. Again, Wokingham Volunteer Center has a great example in their impact report. I will send them a message afterwards to say that I heavily used their example, that I'm so happy that they could provide this example. But this is one of the first pages in their impact report, and it clearly states what their purpose is. This is what we set out to achieve. These are the projects that we'll be doing, the initiatives. These are the outcomes that we want to see from those. Those are the key results. And they also clearly name and explain what they mean by that project. So as a viewer, it's instantly clear how they structured the impact. The only thing that I miss on this page would be that the outcomes are not easily quantified. So it will remain a bit abstract, as in what do they actually mean with they want to have more volunteers. If you're able to quantify that, then I would give this a solid 10 out of 10. If you have more examples that you are willing to share, please do, because we're all here to learn. We've been talking about being able to measure and communicate the value of volunteering or core services by using qualitative stories and backing them up with data and using a proper framework for that. But what if we just switch gears for a second and look at a different perspective on value, and that is the monetary value. And that is also where Gerbrand comes in, because if I look at these two questions, it becomes way too scientific for me. Gerbrand has been building an impact calculator using existing data, using existing formulas. I absolutely love it, but this is also a bit above my, well, it's not my shoot, let's call it that. So Gerbrand, I think the floor is yours to look at if we can put a monetary or economic value on, in this case, volunteering. Can you put a price tag on something that's priceless as social action?
Yes, thank you, Levi. Yeah, indeed, it's the $1 million question, literally. Can we put a price tag on something that's priceless? I say we actually do. And I say we give it a try. And this is also something that we will provide you with at the end of the webinar. We will provide you with a link to our impact calculator, so you can calculate the monetary impact you are making. Talking about monetary impact and economic impact. Can we go to the next slide? Talking about the monetary value and the economic value. It's once again about quality or quantity. It's the difference we make versus the monetary value. And let's first dive deeper into the monetary value and the differences between monetary and economic value. Yes, we are getting a little bit scientific here, but that is my strong suit. So I hope I can spark some enthusiasm for it as well. So let's start with the monetary value. The monetary value actually literally is how much costs are saved in the direct payment. So the direct costs associated with volunteering, which is, for example, if you're volunteering in healthcare, how much costs in healthcare are being saved. That's one part, and that's just the direct costs that are associated. Then we can look at the economic value, and that also includes the personal and societal benefits. Like, we don't have to tell you this, but of course, volunteering is very good for your mental, but also physical health. You can learn new skills, make new connections, and all these are actually worth something as well. And these can then be transposed into another monetary value. For example, if you look at mental or physical health, that's cost being saved from going into mental or physical care. New skills, that's costs being saved for training. But we are not looking at the economic value yet because, that would be kind of hard to quantify with the data we have. But we can actually provide a rough estimate of the monetary value of volunteering. But keep in mind, the economic value of volunteering is expected to be way harder due to the trickle-down effects. Next slide. So I want to give this one a shot, and I want to ask you, would you be able to give a rough estimate on how much volunteering is worth in the UK? Like what the total value is of volunteering, and don't look at the 22.6 billion. What do you think that the total value of volunteering is in the UK? I'm very curious because I want to take you to a small calculator, and we will calculate the full value of volunteering together. And I can already say the answer might surprise you, and this is not clickbait. All right, I will read it later. Are we still there, Levi?
Oh yeah,
We're sharing the
I
screen.
thought you were opening. Yeah.
No.
My
We're now sharing. So right now, based on the latest data, in 2017, the NCVO reported that the value of volunteering was 22.6 billion, and the trustee value of volunteering is 2.6 billion. We believe that's kind of an underestimation, which is also supported by a lot of science. But we can use the trustee value actually to calculate the total value of volunteering. Because if we look at the trustee value, that's 11.5% of the total value of volunteering. If we look at what an average board of trustees look like, we have one chair, we have one treasurer, and on average, 3.9 members. The chair is approximately worth 60K, the treasurer 35.1K, and the members are all worth 30K. And don't look at direct payment, of course. Yes, Alex.
Sorry, do you want to finish your point and then I'll ask a question then, or would you prefer I ask a question now?
Please ask the question now.
So I guess my question is, particularly when it comes to equating costs with volunteers, particularly trustees, is how it differs depending on location. So there is definitely sort of in London, you have an accountant who is going to be more expensive than one who might sort of live elsewhere in the country, and how that's been equated in some of the values and statistics, and if that would need to be equated in some of the statistics if we were to present in this way?
Well, that's a good question, and we'll get to it when we present our SROI calculator ourselves. We recognize that the value of volunteering in London is at least £1 higher currently per hour for regular volunteering. But this is just an average of trustee value throughout the UK. So this isn't just London. This isn't just well, anywhere else. This is still an average. But yeah, you should really equate that value as well. And in our impact calculator, we take into account whether you are located in the Greater London area or when you are not. So yeah, that is actually being taken into account. So let's take the board of trustees. An average board of trustees is worth £200,400. Next. And here we go. Could you click next? We have currently 186,490 charities. A monetary value of a board is £200,400, and the trustee value proportion should be 11.5%, which equates to a total value of volunteering of £324 billion. And that sounds like much, which it is a lot. Trust me, it is a lot. But this is still quite conservative. If you look at the projections that a lot of other people have made, who value it, well, between 250 to even 470 billion euros. So yeah, the total value of volunteering is way higher than you might expect. Even 14.5% of the GDP. And which means that if you look at spending on the NHS, it's 190 billion. We have an SROI of £1.7, which simply means that if you have £1 invested, you will get £1.7 per pound in return, which is a tremendous value. And I'm happy to share the report with you as well. So you can check all the numbers, of course, but I really wanted to share this with you. And well, now it's time to share my screen. I also wanted to show you how you could do this one yourselves. Not just using trustee value, but using your own data. Can you see my screen right now? Yes? I'm sorry, I cannot see the... Cool.
Yep.
So we presented an SROI calculator to find out the monetary value of volunteering in your region. Well, here we get it. You can start out in the UK or, well, anything else than the Greater London area. But let's say that you are located in the Greater London area. We then ask you which metrics you have. So do you want to report on the number of matches or the number of volunteer hours? I will start with the number of matches. And we give you an option to categorize the number of matches or to take the total number of matches. So yeah, we also said that categorization might take a little bit longer, but it will be more accurate, while the total number of matches take into account your regional living wage. Yeah, it's just a question of what metrics do you have and how much time do you want to put into the calculator. So say you have a total number of matches. Say we have fictional 1,050 matches facilitated on your platform in 12 months. And we have a volunteer investment of, say, £950,000. If you submit it, you'll see that you invested £950,000. Your net social return is, well, the total monetary value. So how much, how much your volunteering is worth minus how much it's invested into volunteering. And you see that your social return on investment is £2. So £1 makes you, well, £2 in monetary value in volunteering. And we strongly encourage you to try this for your own organization and see the results, we will share the impact calculator, of course, with you. All right.
Quick question: How do you actually calculate the total investment that you make? Because that was one of the input points.
Yeah. One of the input. Total investments you make is, well, if you have a program, you can see, for example, how much money did you put into the program. It's about, well, salaries of the project coordinator. It's, well, actually every cost associated with running the platform. It's cost created for events. So that's that's to appropriate the costs of investment.
All right.
And don't forget to count your own hours and count your own salaries. So that's a mistake that a lot of people make. Don't forget to count your own salaries.
All right. We'll also, of course, like I mentioned, share the presentation and the link to this impact calculator. If you have any difficult questions about using the calculator, please direct them to Gerbrand and to me, because even after this session, I might have to ask him again about how it works. Hannah, the floor is yours.
Just a quick question, and hopefully I can explain it okay. If you did have both metrics, so you had the volunteer matches and also the volunteer hours, and you calculated both separately, you'd have two different figures. How would you use both of those figures to create an overall picture, or how could you do that?
Well, I would always say that if you actually have the volunteer hours, it's definitely more precise, because for the number of matches, we take the average number of volunteer hours based on government data we have. So we know how much someone volunteers on average, and for the number of matches, it's how much they volunteered, and that's the question also why there's the number of months as well. So we can estimate how much hours of volunteering there has been, and these hours of volunteering translate to a certain amount, and then you get the monetary value. So we would always say that volunteering hours is more precise, but sometimes it's hard to measure the number of hours, because often something is a structural role, and it's sometimes unseen. So that's why we use both metrics to make it as convenient as possible.
Okay, thank you.
And also, quite in a more practical sense, in order to know about the actual amount of volunteer hours, you would need to have a very extensive way of data collection, because you need that feedback from either the volunteers or the third sector organizations. And that input is oftentimes lacking. And that is why most of our partners here in the Netherlands, they actually use the amount of matches in order to report on their impact. But using average will get you some way. We actually used the numbers from the London CBS network to also do this calculation. We'll share that afterwards with you, Hannah. We'll save you some work in that regard.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Easy steps to get started with all of this, but also oftentimes overlooked in terms of relevancy. I need to share my screen, otherwise I'm the only one. And that is that you really need a clear idea on why you need to report on impact. It requires an extensive amount of time often. It requires vast amounts of data collection. You need time to properly combine the insights, write them up, communicate them, design your report. So if not aligned with everybody internally within your organization on why you actually need to do this, then you're going to have a hard time getting the time and resources that you need. But don't only look at the internal reasons for doing this. Find out what a stakeholder wants to know. Just properly ask them and take different perspectives into account, because the needs from the community about the impact that you're making are different from that of the funders. So the impact reports combine all of them and trying to keep everybody happy, which in itself is already a very difficult thing to do. If you have a clear idea on what you want to, why you report, you're also going to start choosing the right objectives, where you want to go, how you will measure your progress, and what are the activities and initiatives that you'll be doing. Those initiatives and key results, they will provide you with the data points that you absolutely need to collect. So don't measure everything that you can measure just because you can, but try to limit it to the things you absolutely need to know. If you combine those insights, that is your impact framework, and that is what you can use to form your narrative. What that might look like, and I will take this example if that's okay. This is also a very well-designed impact report from our partner, Spark Somerset. I specifically chose this example also because I like the way it's designed, and it's easy to read, it's fun to read, it's pleasing for the eyes, but it also has great content. So they share this graphic style where they present the key results, and they combined it with reactions and comments from third sector local organizations on the value that they see from these numbers. So it's a quantitative presentation combined with the qualitative side. And that's why I especially liked it. They also did this breakdown across the regions, across different sectors and categories. So it also enables people to dive deeper into the context. A link is also provided for you to skip through it. And lastly, they shared this cool journey they had in the last couple of years, where they celebrated different milestones on the way to success. So this really takes people and readers on journey across their impact, rather than having these communicated separately. That's what I like. While I'm going, I will also take this one. Oh, I'm stealing Gerbrand's shine. I'm sorry, but I'm feeling it. I also like the way that you don't have to wait for your yearly impact or annual report to report on your impact. It's something that you do on an ongoing basis. It's where you take these micro milestones or achievements that you share them. This is, for example, a Dutch partner that hopped on a podcast to talk about the difference that they are making within the local community, and this is also what they use to later on combine into their annual report. I see this comment. Oh yeah, from Natasha, a volunteer story of the month in the newsletter, and all these micro moments add up to a continuous communication of the impact that you're making. Of course, if there's hard data to share, this is Go for Hearts. Let's celebrate a little while back reaching 1,500 volunteer applications, and also the increase they've seen in the last couple of years. And this is also a huge part of their journey towards becoming the one-stop shop for all things volunteering. So they also use this data to show how they can increase the engagement over time. Last but not least, we want to end with a couple of tips before we open the floor, because I'm curious to hear from you if and how you report on your impact currently. Gerbrand, you want to take up this one? I won't steal your shine any further.
No worries, no worries. Very well explained. So yeah, we have some cool tips, tricks to just get creative. An impact report is not something that you do every year because you have to. Well, naturally, you have to do it, but it's something you build towards the entire year. So you have to collect the stories as you go, not at the last moment. And a small benefit, as Natasha, for example, said, uh, if you collect those stories, you can use them in your own communication. So volunteer story of the month, a podcast, an infographic, milestones, very nice to share on your socials. And you can reuse them in your report. So actually collect the stories on the go. Second, you have to involve others and connect with partners. A report shouldn't be done by one person, but should be done by a lot of persons. Should be done by a team, and you should involve each others and connect with partners. Ask for a guest blog, for example. Ask other organizations to tell their stories in your report. And if you connect with your partners and involve others, it's more than just a report, it's building a community as well. Third, use the tools to help you quantify your impact. Well, small plug for our own impact calculator. We will share it, of course, but use an impact calculator to also share your monetary impact, which is definitely a very great addition to your own report. And use the data you have and tell the stories with that data. And last, find creative ways to tell your story. A report doesn't have to be a simple PDF. It can also be a web page. It could be an interactive PDF with QR codes, movies, just short films, podcasts. There's a lot of ways to tell your story. Use interviews, use surveys to collect more data. For example, use a nice infographic as, right here, Voluntary Norfolk did. Just to tell your story and make it as interactive as possible. So it isn't just a boring report, but it really showcases what your organization is doing and how you connect with people and what big of a difference you are making as an organization. Those are some tips to get started. So get creative, and I think that's it. And we will now open the floor for questions or remarks.
Or experiences that you want to share. I see a couple of hands. Hannah, you have been working on the impact report for the London CVS network, right? We've discussed it previously. Anything you want to share?
My comment wasn't about that, but I will share that the good thing about the London CVS network report is it's a collective report from a group of organisations, which means in amongst the data, the specific organisations, all while they're being sort of spotlighted, they're also staying anonymous. So it sort of allays any risk associated with sharing all of these numbers. So I will say that. But what I was going to say is actually more of a comment than a question. It's really helpful that you've shared these good reports that you've seen, because I'm going to go away and have a look at those and see if they'll give me any extra ideas. So thank you very much.
Sure, no problem. And I must say that the examples were a bit hard to find. And I will also say that the examples in the UK were easier to find than the Dutch examples, which kind of disappointed me a little bit. But I also see that we still have a long way to go over here in order to properly communicate about the impact that we're making. I've only seen a handful of decent-looking reports. Anyone else? Just open your mic or use the chat. Happy to hear from you.
I guess I've got a bit of a question. So firstly, in the calculations for matches aspect of it, are we assuming then that the matches go on to do volunteering? Because in most cases, a small percentage of people matched are actually go to volunteer on the ground? So are we taking the matches to be a more, they've gone to volunteer, they've done some volunteering? Is that correct?
That is correct. And that is also one of the challenges that we've seen. Like either matches in our system, it works like this: somebody applies, third sector organization has to say this is a match. After it has been marked as a match, we also generate, if the volunteer actually showed up and volunteered, an activity report is opened and checked by the organization manager to say, well, these amount of hours have been done. But this requires administration from multiple people to actually get to the bottom of things. And this is also why it's always difficult. If you have incomplete data, then it decreases your ability to properly report. But this is a challenge that we see not only with DeepMob partners, but across the sector, because you have so many variables to take into account. But that it's also like, it's a utopia to think that we will get 100% of data always. But if you get to this point where you can make a decent estimation on amount of hours volunteered, like averages, or how many matches turn into actual volunteers, you're able to use that data still to collect calculate your impact.
Great, thank you. And so I'm based in Harrow in northwest London, and we don't have a volunteer centre. We very much we share a lot of volunteering opportunities to our communities, but we work mainly with groups to manage their own volunteering. And so we're really just sort of an amplifier of volunteer opportunities rather than coordinators of those opportunities. One of the questions more recently has been around how we can value impact of volunteers sort of locally. And we know that there are a number of organizations using volunteers. And I guess, does the platform allow for multiple organizations to feed into a bigger picture on volunteering in a borough, instead of it being a council for voluntary service or a volunteer centre to be the one to, I imagine there might be some discrepancies in data if somebody is volunteering at multiple different organizations, but would it be as simple as finding out the number of volunteers or the number of volunteer hours that somebody's doing, inputting that in, and then basically getting a value that way? Or is there a way that organizations themselves can feed into a larger Harrow portfolio or something like that?
Yeah, it's actually both.
Okay.
Well, we combine these insights, because I also, and this is also, if you zoom out, take the one step higher, an excellent point that you're making, because as a, let's say, CVS or a volunteer center, you're not directly responsible for all the impact that is being made. You're a facilitator of said impact, which also, but I also think that the role that you play in this sense is vital to showing the impact. And I think the example from Hannah is the best one, is where different organizations come together and they represent a lot of third organizations that need to provide input. And ultimately, at the end of the road, this is the main objective that we at DeepMob always set out to do, is being able to bring the sector together, not just to report on impact in a combined whole, but also to benefit from working together. Because London is the best example for this. If you have a volunteer that is volunteering for multiple organizations across different boroughs, then it doesn't make any sense if you don't have a joint approach to communicating and calculating that impact. But I also, from very, very trustworthy sources, that there are steps to be undertaken there. All right. looking at the oh yeah, I also saw some sources being shared. Thank you, Alicia. I believe you're also Action Together. I've seen that one. I really loved it. It is, I believe, one of the more extensive reports that I've seen. A lot of background stories, really diving deep into all the different services that you provide. So please take a look at that. My only remark that report would be to structure it in such a way that I can instantly see this was the objective, this is how we measure success, and these were the initiatives that we've taken. For me, it felt like the report had a lot of value, but it needed a bit more better structure. So excuse the more Dutch directness, but that is, but I did absolutely love it. Natasha, also, thank you for sharing your impact report. Haven't seen that one, but I will also dive into that a little bit later. So we will follow up with all the sources that we've shared, all the links in a very easy to see email, and also use the impact calculator. We'll also put in our contacts. So if you want to do the calculation together, if that might help you communicate your value to the outside world and its stakeholders in a better way, then we're already happy that we could help you make a difference in that case. As always, lovely to see you all here. That's the benefit of attending live. You're able to connect with others. We also have another session coming up in November. We'll dive deeper into the trends in volunteering. So we're going to take a look at the last year. What have we seen? And what are the next couple of years going to look like? Because they're going to be crucial years. Well, every year is crucial in this sector. But it feels like in all senses, this is the time where we need to come together and learn together. And we are honored that we can facilitate these connections. Volunteering Academy, yeah, that will also be one of the trends that we'll also discuss in November. So hope to see you there, but let's first crack the cookie on impact reporting.
Thank you.
Oh, I will keep the chat open a little bit. I see a lot of links flying back and forth, so love that. We'll close the session for now, but stay tuned for the